Hello, 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 and welcome back to our weekly Sunday school lesson. I am Elder Latanya Milliken of the All Nations Church in Oakland, California. My pastor is Bishop Terrence L. Milliken, and this is Lesson 12. In our summer quarter, the date of the lesson is August the 20th, 2023. And we are in the book of Matthew, the 20th chapter, the 1st through the 16th verse. So if you have your favorite translations, go ahead and grab them. Our subject today is God's gracious rewards. And before we get started, we're going to give just a few shout outs. I want to say congratulations to Hazel. Hazel works with me at Chase, and her boyfriend became engaged. I'm always advocating marriage. And I'm so excited. While I was on vacation, they got engaged and she showed me the video, and I was just emotional, but it was just a wonderful thing. So I just want to say congratulations to you, Hazel. All the best to you. And if you're celebrating anything, a birthday, an anniversary, an engagement, all the best to you in your celebrating. And for our students that are going back to school, please keep them in prayer. Please pray that they have a safe school year, a year full of growth and learning, and they meet some new friends and just have a great experience, because I love learning. I believe I'm a life learner. You're always learning and you're always growing, and this is a beautiful thing. So let's just pray as we have many students have already started school, and some are still getting or starting maybe next week or at the end of the month. But let's just pray for all of our students. Now let's go to our lesson. I don't think I missed any birthdays. I know some are coming up. But anyway, I'll get to them. I won't forget you. I won't forget you. All right. So let's talk about our lesson. Let me just set it up for you. This is a great lesson. Now, we've been in the book of Mark and the book of Luke, this quarter, learning from parables. Parables are stories that Jesus teach. They're familiar, that he creates the stories, with things that are familiar with his audience, to teach them a truth. All right. And so this particular lesson today, we're talking about a wealthy landowner. This wealthy landowner, and this wealthy landowner represents God. Eventually we'll learn this in the parable. And typically wealthy owners in Israel had tenants to work their estates, but less wealthy landowners hired extra workers temporarily to gather their harvest. And so this particular landowner, it was harvest time and he needed laborers to harvest his grapes. And so let's just talk about the particulars real quick. So to hire out, you would hire a day laborer. Now, a day laborer could be a farmer who owned his own smaller farm. He would work his farm in the morning and then hire himself out to make extra money. And then there were sons who had not inherited their father's land yet, so they hired themselves out to make money. And then there were those who lost their land, and they would travel from place to place seeking work. And so they would all meet in the marketplace, and you could go there as a landowner and hire people to work for a day. Labor. Okay, that's the labor. Now, the wage would typically, the average wage was a denarius, which was a penny, right? And so this was per day, or whatever you agreed upon, whatever term you agreed upon, whatever the landowner and the worker agreed upon would be the wage. Now, in the Old Testament protect both the employee and the employer. So the landowner could expect a day's work from whatever they agreed upon, whatever wage they agreed upon. And then the worker could expect payment at the end of the day for whatever work they agreed upon. And so they paid them at the end of the day, because the Old Testament law prohibited workers from being exploited. And they paid them at the end of the day so that they could feed their families, because typically they didn't have a savings account or credit cards that they could use, so they would get paid at the end of the day. So you worked a day and you got paid at the end of the day. And So they were protected under the Old Testament law. Now let's talk about the shifts real quickly, because this is going to help in the story. Now, the day we particularly usually begin at 6 a.m. This was the cool part of the day. And that was the first shift. The second shift was the third hour. The third hour was 9 a.m. So the second shift was the third hour at 9 a.m. The third shift was the sixth hour at 12 noon. The fourth shift was at the ninth hour at 3 p.m., which was the hottest part of the day. And then they would end the day at 6 o'clock. So you had a 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, noon, 3 o'clock, and end the day at 6 p.m. And that was considered first hour, the third hour, the sixth hour, the ninth hour, in different shifts. So now, again, I mentioned that they would go to the marketplace and they would gather there, and the landowners could go there and get laborers. Okay. Now, so this we're gonna read and get to the main idea of the story. I want to kind of give you a little heads up, though. The lesson is teaching us that what we receive from God is due to his grace, because the Pharisees was teaching that you could obtain God's favor through righteous deeds. So we've got this teaching by the Pharisees that you can, again, obtain God's favor through righteous deeds. But Jesus is teaching his disciples and his hearers and his listeners quite the contrary, that God gives and blesses us according to his grace. And so this parable is going to help us with that. Now, we've been talking about a lot. We've been sharing this quarter a lot of parables, and most of them begin with, in the King James Version, for the kingdom of heaven is like. These stories describe what involves living under God's rule. God's kingdom is different, has different priorities and values than our human governments. And so you're going to see in the story how the payout was a little bit different than what we expect today. And again, we're going to learn this parable usually illustrates one principle or truth. So we're going to see what the main idea of this parable is. So let's go to our reading. If you have your favorite translations, we're in, again, Matthew's, the 20th chapter, reading the 1st through the 16th verse. So let's get the reading out of the way. And it goes, even in the way. For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them that he would pay them, okay, mind you, whatever was right at the end of the day. All right. Verse 5, so they went to work in the vineyard at noon and again at 3 o'clock. He did the same thing. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he was in town again and saw more people standing. He asked them, why haven't you been working today? They replied, because no one has hired us. The landowner told them, then go out and join the others in my vineyard. That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more, but they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. Those people only worked 1 hour, and yet you paid them just as much as you paid us who worked the full day in this scorching heat. He answered one of them, friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for a usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. It isn't against the law for me to do what I want to do with my money. I'm going to read that again. It isn't against the law for me to do what I want to do with my money. Should you be jealous because I'm kind to others? So those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first will be last. So let's unpack this lesson. Let's see what's happening in this lesson. So let's see what the main idea is and the truth in this parable that teaches us. So you have a man who has this large vineyard, okay, we've just read, and he needed laborers to harvest his grapes, right? And so in Israel, you could always find someone who was not working full time, so there was always particularly day laborers who would go to the marketplace and they would gather there. And so again, as the story shares with us, he went out early in the morning and got workers at 6 o'clock in the morning. And he agreed, mind you, he agreed to pay them a standard wage, which is a penny. They agreed on the terms and went into the vineyard and started working. So then a few hours passed, and the man realized he needed more workers. But the way says he was just in town and he saw people not working. And so he hired them, okay? Because the grapes, in the Sunday school lesson, it says that the grapes were ripe and he wanted the harvest taken care of because it was hot in Israel, and once they're ripe, they won't last long. So then when he went to the marketplace at the 9 o'clock hour and he found men to work, he agreed with them to give them whatever is right. So this is different from the first. The first agreed, I'm going to give you a full day's wage, and they agreed. In this particular group, at the 9 o'clock hour, I'm going to give you whatever is right. And they agreed. And so they went into the vineyard and they started working, and they assumed that they would get some type of fraction of what the denarius would be. And so they agreed and they went to work. Now, as the day went on, as the story shares, he went back to town, and at noon and at 3 p.m., he saw people working and he hired them and he agreed to pay them whatever was right. So now this is the second and the third shift. And so they trusted him. They trusted to do what he said he would do, pay them what was right. And so the day went on. So we've got workers at 6, workers at 9, workers at noon, and workers at 3. And then an hour before closing time, or an hour before the end of the workday, which is around 5 o'clock, he goes back to the marketplace. He sees people that are still waiting to work, and he says, well, why are you here? He says, well, no one has hired us. He says, okay, well, come and work for me and I will pay you what is right. No one had hired them. This was a good thing, right? This is a good thing. They were going to get, now they just knew they would get probably 1/12 of a penny because they were only working 1 hour. And so the story goes on, and now they've all worked. We've got these groups. We have, again, one worked at 6, one started at 9, a group started at 12, a group started at 3, and a group started at 5. It's the end of the day, and the laborers are ready to be paid. Now, again, the Old Testament law protected the employees. They were to get paid at the end of the day, and the owner could expect a day's labor. All right. So the landowner goes to his foreman, his steward, his administrator, his manager, and he gives specific instructions on what to pay the workers and how and in what manner to pay the workers. And so the workers who started at 5 o'clock came to be paid first. And they had begun work at the 11th hour, if you will. They worked 1 hour. They were quoted that they would get whatever was right. And they did not expect to receive a full denarius. They were hoping to get at least 1/12, which was not even enough to feed himself or his family. It was very inadequate, but it was better than nothing, right? And so at the end of the shift, they came and they were amazed. Something unprecedented happened. They were paid a full day's wage. They were paid the full penny. And this was 12 times what they expected to get. And so the owner had compensated them according to his goodness, not according to what they had earned. So this is the main idea here. The owner had compensated them according to his storehouse, according to his wealth, according to his goodness, not according to what they had earned. And so then he did the same for each work group. So then after the 5 o'clock, when the 3 o'clock came, they got a penny. And then the noon group came, the 9 o'clock group came. And it was a measure of his grace. This is the main point. It was a measure of his grace and his kindness that those received, that he received that. And so we're gonna get to the heart. Well, let me just wrap the story up so we can get to the heart of this. Okay, so the first shift came and they watched what the other groups were paid, thinking they were gonna get a bonus, right? But they received a penny as well. They were stunned that they got the same amount as the people who came at 5 o'clock. And they began to grumble and mumble and complain that you are unjust. This is not work. That last shift only worked through the cool of the day. We worked all day long and it was hot. And these last comers, we're offended. You are unjust. This is not right. And so they criticized the owner of being and claimed that he was unfair and unjust in his dealings. But the owner was not intimidated. Neither was he angry. So he grabbed one of the first shift workers and walked him and pulled him to the side. And he says, I'm not unjust. I'm not unfair. I didn't do you wrong. You agreed on a penny and I paid you a penny. Now go your way. Rather than complain and mumble, go your way. Because I gave you what I agreed to give you. The owner gave in terms of his grace. This is the point. The owner gave in terms of his grace. His resources belong to him. Point taken. His resources belong to him. He had the right to dispense as he pleased. His choice, it was his choice to give workers more. It was his choice to give the workers more. And those who grumble and complain, they were at fault because they were jealous. They had received what they had agreed upon, but they were selfish. And they had this evil attitude versus having a heart like the owner. So what we see here is that God He owns everything. And what he gives to us is according to his grace. It's according to his goodness. And we can see some get more than others. Some have more talent than others. Some have more blessings and wealth than others. But God gives according to his grace, according to his goodness. Likewise, you do what you want with your things. You bless who you want to bless. It's yours to give away. It's yours to share. It's yours to bless others. likewise. This is how it works. This is how the kingdom of heaven works. It does not work like human and worldly structure. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto this, where God gives out of his grace. Whatever we receive is the goodness of God. Whatever we receive is by his grace and by his mercy. God gives freely according to his grace and according to his pleasure. Let us see what the actual fact of the lesson is: to investigate and to interpret Jesus' parable of the laborers in the vineyard. The principle is to teach that God's sovereignty rewards according to his grace, not according to human standards. And the application is to help students appreciate and accept the actions of their God. I just got 2 seconds left. I'm going to read the conclusion. God's ways are not our ways. There are many things that God does that we do not understand. We should remember that God is sovereign and gracious. He is just and faithful, keeping his promises. He also is gracious. He also is a gracious rewarder to those who put their trust in him. As Christians, it is not our place. It is not our place. It is not our place to murmur at God's judgment or to be envious of those who seem to be more blessed than others. We should worship our God and trust him to always, I will give you what is right, to always give you what is right, to always do what's right. So let's not judge. Let's not be jealous, but let's be thankful to God who always gives out of his pleasure. I hope you enjoyed the Sunday school lesson. It has been a beautiful lesson. It's time to get your Sunday school books. I will put the link in the description. Please like it, subscribe it, share it. Get the word of God out. I love you. God bless you. Until next week.